Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Around the UK, you might often hear a phrase, "We've got a right one here." And we use this phrase to describe people who either look or hold an opinion which is contrary to our own. Okay, so someone who holds a very different opinion, we often think to ourselves, or we say to other people, "Oh, we've got a right one here." Just to say that slowly, "We've got a right one here." And it's often said in a kind of colloquial way, like a humorous way. "Oh, we've got a right one here, a right one here," as we sometimes say, dropping the H. And it simply means that there's someone who is different. And we say we because we usually turn to another person to say it in order to gain support for our own opinion. Let me just give you a few examples. So imagine that you're working in a customer service center and you get a phone call, okay, and the man says, "I'd like to speak to Dr. Smith, please." And you say, "Dr. Smith, sorry, this is a financial helpline. We don't have anyone called Dr. Smith here." And the person says, "I want to speak to Dr. Smith." And you say again, "I'm sorry, we don't have anyone here called Dr. Smith." And the person repeats his claim, and you say, "Hold on a moment, please." You put them on hold, you turn to your colleagues, and you say, "Oh, we've got a right one here. We've got a right one here. This man's looking for someone called Dr. Smith. Is there anyone here that knows anyone by that name that works here?" They all say no, and they laugh. And you say to them, "Yeah, I thought so." You go back on the telephone and you say, "Look, there's no one here by the name of Dr. Smith. I'm really sorry. Try redialing." And you terminate the call. That's a good example of when you would use it. Another example, imagine you're in the pub, and while you're there, somebody comes in, okay. Now you're working in the pub, okay, so you're on the other side of the bar. Somebody comes in and says, "Hello, can I have a pint of dragon's blood, please?" You roll your eyes, there's a moment's silence, and you say, "Dragon's blood, huh?" And the person says, "Yes, just a pint. Actually, with a drop of lemonade, if you don't mind." And you go along to your boss and you say, "Oh, we've got a right one here. Someone looking for a pint of dragon's blood. I'm guessing we don't have any products by that name." And the manager just rolls his eyes and he says, "Oh, don't worry. He comes in every week. I'll talk to him." Okay, so those are examples of when you can use this phrase, "We've got a right one here." It's usually said in a kind of a soft way, "Oh, we've got a right one here," with the H dropped off. And I think we do that because this phrase originally came from London. So sometimes they drop the H's in their words. So I think that's why we say it. And we've all had moments like that, you know. We never use it in the past tense. We never use it in the future. It's merely to describe something which is happening at that moment. And it's really, really important that you use we, because you're talking to someone else about it and you're trying to rally support for someone to agree with you. Okay, so speaking of "we've got a right one here," or a right one ear, as we sometimes say, I want to tell you about someone from the UK. And if you ever met this person, or maybe if you're watching him on TV, you could turn to your family and say, "Oh, we've got a right one here on TV at the moment." And it's all about David Icke. Now, David Icke is a British conspiracy theorist. I didn't know we had those because usually when we hear about conspiracy theorists, they tend to be American. But this one was forecasting the end of the world in the 1990s. He went live on British TV in 1991 and he declared the world as we know it is about to end. Now, the reason why this sounded really funny was because he went into great detail about how a tiny Scottish island, which nobody had ever heard of, was going to be destroyed by tidal waves, earthquakes, and everything else. I mean, the island is really, really small. It was such a bizarre place to choose to tell us that the end of the world was going to begin there. So everyone laughed at him, and then he declared himself the Son of God, and so people laughed at him even more. And then he said that the earth will cease to exist. It was the weirdest thing. He then said, while he was being laughed at, that laughter was actually good to remove negativity. At which point the presenter said, "Yeah, but they're laughing at you, not with you." But anyway, he became rather famous here. He's still around. He still writes books. The weird thing about him is that he was actually a BBC TV presenter. He presented the sports news. And after that interview, he had a very difficult time because, of course, public opinion went against him. Even people started gathering outside of his house, making fun of him, and he had to really face that. And he said that one of his greatest fears was being ridiculed in public. As a TV presenter, he'd been respected, whereas now people were just laughing at him. And whenever anyone here talks about conspiracy theories, they just talk about David Icke, because he's perhaps our most famous one. I mean, some of his things are actually, well, relatively believable. But strangely, this thing about the earth being destroyed and everything else had nothing to do with climate change. In fact, he's very opposed to climate change. He says it's false media. He claimed, and he still claims, that the world is run by a reptilian race. Yeah, I'm not sure if he was the one that came up with Mark Zuckerberg being a reptile, but certainly he subscribes to that belief. In fact, he might have been one of the first ones to come up with this. He goes into great details. He says that these reptiles hijack the earth and are stopping humanity from realizing its true potential. Yeah, and he says that the first reptilian human breeding program took place 200,000 years ago. It's all really bizarre. I mean, all of the stuff that he's written, I could be here for hours trying to go through it, but I'm not going to do that. But he's quite controversial. I mean, he said a number of things which have got him into trouble a lot of times. He's written 20 self-published books. One of his books, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. the lion sleeps no more, is when he suggests that the earth and the collective human minds are manipulated from the moon, uh, where there's a spacecraft which interdimensional portal reptilians control. Oh, he's not the kind of person you'd really want to have at your dinner party, because I'm sensing that maybe he would dominate the conversation. He's been investigated by the media a few times because he's broken some media codes during some of his interviews, because he's expressed views which have had the potential of harming people, and you're not allowed to do that. And during COVID, of course, he doesn't believe COVID exists either, so he got himself into big trouble. Actually, I was just thinking the other day who I would invite if I was having a dinner party. It certainly wouldn't be him, but maybe I'd bring him in for dessert. I wouldn't want him there with other people because he might dominate the conversation. I mean, if I'm having Buddha, for example, I wouldn't think the Buddha would like him very much. I could have Britney Spears there. She'd probably spend some time with them. Um, Maybe Mother Teresa from Calcutta. Well, she's dead now, of course, but she could have helped me to cook something. I mean, she was old, but she could have microwaved something even. Anyway, I'm going off topic here. So that's David Icke. He certainly, if you came in contact with him and he gave you his views, you would almost certainly say, "Oh, we've got a right one here." So it's perfectly normal to say that when you meet someone who's different from yourself. It's very common. You hear it all the time. Even if it's someone on TV, you can say, "Oh, we've got the right one here. Come and look at the television," and call your children to see what's happening. All right, so that's it. That's today's phrase. And if you want to read more about David Icke, he's still very famous. He's still publishing things. He has his own website, of course, where you can read his articles. Yeah, that little island that was going to be destroyed. That's what I remember about him. Very strange, but well, who am I to judge? Right, see you all. Bye.